Hey, what's going on, guys? Nate and Phillip back at it again with another episode of the PokeTalk podcast. What's going on?
Hey, not too much. Kind of a slow news cycle.
Yeah, a little slower. Got some random topics just to kind of touch on today. Might notice me be a little stuffy throughout this, but some allergies are getting me. But yeah. What you been up to? You been doing anything Pokemon related?
Still playing Go, obviously. Pretty hyped up, kind of preparing some stuff for New York City. Taking a bunch of photos, preparing to go see the eclipse, but I'm not taking photos of the eclipse because that's too expensive. I don't have all the gear. So I'm just going to enjoy it and shoot areas around Cape Girardeau. I figure that's going to be more fun, and there's a lot of things around Cape that are up my alley in terms of photography interests, so it's going to be pretty fun that way. Going to be a busy week, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, I still don't know if I'm going to make it down to see. Like, the wife and I, we're working around it, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Got to really enjoy the 2017 one.
You see, here's the thing. I was busy. I didn't do any preparation with it. At that point, I was only like 4 months sober, so mentally I wasn't all like with it still, I would say. I was still kind of in recovery. And so I wasn't prepared, and I spent the whole time with the eclipse pretty much just fooling around with my camera settings. I know, stupid. So being able to actually appreciate this one. Yeah, I know I'm going to do it photos, but I'm still going to make sure just a large amount of time just appreciating it. Because this might be I know we're both young, but this might be the last one we ever see. Because there's not another one in the continental United States like 2047, I think. And it's in like Wyoming or something. And then there is one in 2048 as well, just the next year, that is around Missouri and like the Midwest. So,
yeah, I saw one maybe in the 2040s, maybe hitting Arkansas.
Yep, that's like the one in like 2048
down.
or something like that. Yep.
But yeah, I really soaked it in on the first one, and it is really cool, and I'm sure I'm going to have tons of people posting about it online to see anyway, but yeah, I'll hit the 2045 or whenever that is.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping I'll be able to afford all the gear, because just to do it like halfway decent, it would have cost me like almost $1,500. And the thing with that is, if it were cloudy or something, and I would have to move last minute, I run the risk of not being able to get it right at all, and that just was not worth it. Like the cost to what I would potentially get out of it just was not worth it at all.
Yeah,
especially since I'm going to. And it's like, because I'm going to Colorado this year in New York City, I'd rather spend that money towards equipment to bring up there and get more utility out of my buck, essentially.
Yeah, I think the early forecast people were saying back home, because like my parents are like 20-minute drive from like the literal complete totality, like perfect in the middle of the line. Forgot what they call it, but like they're in the path, but they're like 20 minutes from like the direct middle, pretty much. And the extended forecast, people were posting on there thinking it was going to be cloudy, but yeah, it's just kind of crazy that we had two so close together kind of cross over our area. Because my parents' area in particular is like right at the crossroads of the two eclipses that happened.
I mean, we've been pretty lucky too, because if you look at the next two that are supposed to happen, I mean, not the one in like 2046, but then in 2048 or 47, whatever it is, we're not that far from that one either. Yeah. So we've been pretty fortunate to, one, have two so close, but then the next ones that are coming up are also going to be comparable in area, and pretty fortunate. Like if you're East Coast, you know what I mean? Like this is one thing where you get kind of screwed on.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. But yeah, Pokemon wise, haven't really solidified our plans for Collecticon yet. We're talking about Kansas City, looking at guests that are coming. I know we've been kind of watching, and I know KC gets the flack for being the quote unquote smallest, but
I mean, See, last year at this time, we already had like uh, Schimmel had already confirmed. Same with Veronica Taylor. Now, if you look at this one, it's got a lot of those names. There's missing one that plays Ichigo. I forget his name. It's mostly the same people though, minus Veronica Taylor and Schimmel, which is pretty big because those are some of the biggest two draws. And now you kind of make up for it with Chuck Norris and Ray Park, I guess. But I'm just kind of disappointed that like we might not see Schimmel again or Taylor. And
Yeah.
at this point, we got maybe another 30, 45 days at most. If nobody else commits by then, this is going to be the list.
Yeah, I feel like, Veronica Taylor, she posts a lot herself, and I feel like she doesn't post much until the week of the shows that she's going to. So I don't know if that's because she hasn't decided or if that's just like her promoting before she goes, like only one thing at a time. But I'll have to pay attention, like maybe when she was announced for these shows that she's posting about. But yeah, it'd be nice to. I was hoping to maybe see and get Sean Schimmel if he came back. Chuck Norris is cool. Kind of surprised that Chuck Norris is going to Kansas City,
Same
but
here, especially considering his age. I wonder how
yeah,
much they paid him. Probably $50,000, I bet.
yeah. Hopefully, it's more of a him decision and not like, okay, Kansas City sucks, so let's get Chuck Norris there. You know,
Well,
which
I'm
could be the
wondering if they,
case.
yeah, like I'm wondering if they did that also, if they went out and got him, because I think that's kind of what you were saying, because they couldn't get the same draw of people that they did last year.
Yeah,
They do have Adam MacArthur, who is the lead voice for Jujutsu Kaisen, which is actually really, really damn good. Okay, I apologize. I was wrong about the show. I rewatched it. Season 2 was incredible. I was wrong. I admit I'm wrong. I talk so much shit on the show. Forgive me, people. But anyways, he is pretty big, I think. But I mean, the rest of the people is kind of the same old, same old. This is what they do for their career, essentially. Which, not to disparage them, but it's just like if they're there every year, they've been there every single year, and they're the first ones committed. I'm talking about like Eric Stewart, Dan Green. Those folks would be great to meet, but this is what they do for work now. This is their career.
mhm. Yeah, and I got the Dan Green Eric Stewart combo
Yep.
signature last year on the token card, so it might be cool to get like one individual separate card, maybe the Dark Magician and the Blue Eyes or something.
Well,
But I
I
don't
would
know.
say if Taylor or Schimmel don't commit, then I'm going to go ahead and get Dan Green's and Eric Stewart's signatures. I'm probably going to get 3 potentially from Eric Stewart because last year I got a poster from Veronica Taylor that had all the OG like characters from Pokemon, and I had Taylor sign it, and I kind of want everybody else to sign it as well. And since Eric Stewart plays both James and Brock, and even Squirtle and all that, I might have him sign it twice if he would do that and just get all these out of the way. And then that way, if we end up going again next year, I only have the big names to go after, and that's it.
Yeah. I've debated who I wanted. Like, obviously, I want to see Chuck Norris. I was thinking, I don't know if I really care to have a signature. Like, I just want to, like, see him.
Yeah,
But if I'm there, if the signature is, like, super expensive, I'll be
I
like,
bet it's gonna be $100, dude. I bet it's gonna be like, would you pay it if it's $100? That's
see,
what I'm
yeah,
assuming it's
probably
gonna
not.
be. That's what I'm assuming it's gonna be is $100. I'd be shocked if it's a little lower than that.
I was even
If it's 150, I'm right there with you. I'm saying no.
I was even having a thought like if it's like if it's like more than $40, I don't care to buy it, but I know it's going to be more than $40.
Yeah,
So I
I
don't know.
mean,
I'll have to see how I feel in the moment.
for me, it's more like if it's more than 100, I'm saying no. I'm expecting it to be around $100, just because it's one of those things that's cool for there, like you're saying, but to drop a bunch of money, I'm gonna have to say no on it. But I'm prepared to spend $100 on it. I already bought a card for him to sign, So
Yeah, I really want to just like enjoy opening something too this time. I know our buddy might be going again, and he's wanting to open something, and I kind of want to maybe get like some 151, maybe a booster box or two, or maybe a first chapter Lorcana box. I don't know, just something. So
I wouldn't mind opening some One Piece. I don't care. I don't never watch the show really outside of like the first 100 episodes, but it'd be something cool that's different to open.
yeah, I'll probably steer clear of that one, but
I mean, we'll see, but like I don't mind opening as well. It's just I already have a budget for all the autos I'm going to get, but it's going to be subject to change if uh, Schimmel and Taylor end up committing. Like essentially, it's one of those things where I'm going to be probably dropping Eric Stewart and Dan Green for my on my intro lineup, and then focus on Schimmel and Taylor because I'd probably want Schimmel to sign three things again.
yeah, I
So
would definitely get Schimmel. Probably like I don't really care of doubling up unless like Eric Stewart and Dan Green had like their own separate, you know, Blue Eyes and Dark Magician sign. But yeah, I don't know. I'd maybe double up on Veronica Taylor, and that might be it.
the reason why I
What
would
about
do Schimmel,
Mayo?
well, I'm gonna say I would do the Schimmel because when the auto I got from him that I sold very quick. Um, I think it's very unique in the sense that Schimmel, at least for Westerners, is universally considered the voice of Goku, which I mean he is, right? But he's the one where I think a lot of people identify immediately as like, oh, that's Goku, and I think it tugs a lot of nostalgia strings, and a lot of people associate the two hand in hand. Like it's not like getting like the voice of Mario on like a Super Mario or like a Mario Pikachu card. Getting his signature on a Goku card makes sense because to anybody that's pretty much grew up with Dragon Ball Z, he is the voice. So you
Right.
understand why he would there. And you don't necessarily need the art, the signature of the artist, if that makes sense. Having Sean Schimmel's signature means more than having signature of the artist on a Goku card, in my opinion, both for the current Dragon Ball Super TCG and the OG Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, it just feels different having certain TCGs and certain voice actors, certain characters, certain cards even. Like we talked about with the Mario and Charles Martinet signing Mario Pikachu doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
make sense. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yep, should be exciting. We'll know more details soon, hopefully. But
Yeah.
I know I mentioned Japanese 151. They might
Yep.
be having some reprints. Been seeing a lot of Japanese suppliers not really confirming that there's a reprint, but a lot of different people, a lot of different suppliers on the Japan side all of a sudden have a lot of 151. And it looks to be like a restock, like quite a bit. But no one's really confirming anything. But, if you think about it, why would you? You don't want people realizing that there's a restock, while you're trying to sell them before the price goes down. So it is a weird situation. I would keep an eye out if you're in the market for some Japanese 151. Does seem like they got a little reprint, but yeah,
Well, it says it's
still
coming. I'm gonna say,
developing.
according to PokeBeach, it says it's coming in May.
Yeah, for the
So
151.
yeah, and it says there's already been one for what was the other set, Crimson Haze, and then they already announced Rulers of the Black Flame as well, more reprints, and just the news alone of the 151 reprint, it dropped the price at least on a specific Japanese marketplace by about 30% or so. So
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't that it was bad. 132. I mean, it is about three times MSRP. But I mean, $100 if it's coming from Japan really isn't that bad.
yeah, and I think we could be seeing just a initial reaction of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like this might not be a reprint that we're seeing these people sell. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
just stock that they've stowed
Been
away.
holding. Yep.
And now that they know a reprint's coming, they're just trying to get rid of it before the new ones come.
And it dips even further. Yep.
So yeah, we have seen the initial dip. If you're really itching to get in, I would wait maybe June, July if you're looking to buy a decent amount. Because yeah, if they drop in May, people are getting their hands on them at the end of May into June. Really, KC CollectCon middle end of June looks like a pretty good time for
To buy, so we could probably
151
find a box for
boxes.
like $80. Yeah. Well, they'll be asking 100. You know they will.
If it's a good restock, like if it's a full restock, then yeah. But if it comes and it's kind of like Evolving Skies, people will find it, get a good price for like a week, and then it's gone. You know, it might not do
Yeah.
much. But another issue with stuff like that is a $2,500 enchanted Elsa from the first chapter. We need a reprint there, you know.
Yeah. Again, I don't think they've announced in a while, but a lot of people assume another one's going to come. I would assume as well that we will at some point this year see another reprint for the first chapter. First chapter, amazingly enough, is actually still holding really strong with the enchanted PSA 10s. However, we've seen this sort of market before. Maybe not as significant as it was in 2020 with Pokemon, but it's not too different, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the enchanted Elsa in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're reaching that Moonbryon level now. The hype
Absolutely.
is getting crazy. People who haven't really been toting about Lorcana are now showing off all their cards. And yeah, people are finally hopping on board. There is a lot of hype around the new official tournament scene.
Yep.
They're officially having, you know, their first actual organized event, and there's been a lot more talk about that with the inclusion of tournament promos and placement promos and champion promos with the leagues. So there's been a lot more of that kick up. I think a lot of interest has finally caught on. You know, the initial wave hype is gone, but now you're seeing a hype of actual players now that they're starting to show their organized stuff. So if they can keep this up, it's going to be really good. But then, yeah, you run into problems like the first chapter and stuff like that, where prices are just getting crazy again. And they have been pretty consistently reprinting the first chapter. I don't think they ever
Mm-hmm.
stopped. Every time we get a new
No.
set, there's people posting about, like, you know, when Into the Inklings came out, there was a bunch of people posting, like, right next to it is a whole rack of the first chapter. Every time they've released a set, they've released the first chapter alongside with it, but usually only in the form of like blister packs. So it's like a slow trickle, like even randomly between sets before we even see a restock of, you know, Floodborn or Into the Inklings, we almost see like another wave of first chapter blisters. So it's like they're constantly pumping it out little by little. But I think they just need to like halt and just like reprint it for real, because it's almost making the problem worse. People are going to buy the new set and then they find the first chapter and then they post about it. Ooh, look what I found at Target. And all the comments on those posts are like, "Oh my god, you're so lucky." Like people are just hunting for the first chapter even when new sets come out. Like, you know, I've even checked myself when I'm close by or we have to go to the store for something. It's like, "Oh, new Lorcana set comes out." I don't care about that. I wonder if they put more first chapter out with it. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling problem right now, and they really just need to hit it hard again. I don't know. It's
Well, I think personally, like first chapter does the thing the first chapter has, at least that, for example, that Into the Inklings has, is I think a good portion of the Enchanteds, for example, and Into the Inklings are pretty mediocre for the most part.
yeah, I agree.
Like there is some okay ones, like Morph is kind of unique, but A lot of the art is uninspiring. It's a lot of like the background's pretty basic. Just has some sort of pose or something for almost all of them. And it's just kind of underwhelming. Now, maybe they'll change. I assume they'll change in the next set, but you can kind of see why people are prioritizing set one because it's already showing that it's overall its art is more iconic and more what's the best way? More it connects to collectors more, I would say, than Into the Inklings does. Even like cool characters like Jafar, I'm kind of underwhelmed with the art.
Yeah. They definitely have some good stuff, but yeah, like we've already talked about before, it kind of like they're getting really broad really early, which is nice. There's really nice mix of stuff to enjoy and really hitting a lot of the IPs, but yeah, it's almost like yeah, I know what you mean. They picked a little more iconic people for the first set, and yeah, it's already kind of become like the set to chase, and obviously people investing in it only want the first set and stuff like that. But yeah, I need to complete my set. I don't know if I'm gonna go for the enchanted rares or not now, but I do have a complete set in a binder, and I need to get the cold foils as well. And obviously the enchanted rares would be nice to pick up just to stow away, but I don't even really want them graded. I just want them for a binder collection, so it's kind of hard to even find a decent raw copy, but maybe I'll find
Well,
one with some scuffs on it or something down the road.
I was gonna say there are some just kind of looking at some price of Enchanted for Into the Inklings. There's obviously it looks like Jafar is one of the bigger ones, but Peter Pan with a no quote unquote no air. I mean the air. That's
Yeah.
probably the most expensive one. But I mean, you're just kind of seeing there is clearly money to be made here because there's obviously people collecting PSA 10, but the it's not even half of what some of the first chapter PSA 10 prices got when they first hit the market
Yeah.
on a lot of these. And I think you'll see that continue. I think going forward, you're going to have specific cards that collectors are going to go after more than anything.
Yeah, and stuff like the Elsa, I I could see card like that even taking over like a lot of lower D23 cards, which it has already. But
Yeah.
I do think like D23 cards are more stable and people understand that rarity. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, moving into the Enchanted, especially with Elsa, I think we're literally seeing an exact copy of what the Moonbryon was. It's the shiny new that everybody wants. The D23 card isn't even getting posted about as much, and it's got,
Mm-mm.
a more simpler looking artwork. So a lot of people like the Enchanted more, and we're just entering that Moonbryon territory where it's just kind of crazy, and it'll always be crazy. We'll probably get a reprint. The hype will probably die out, and it will come down, but Moonbryon's on the run again, too. It's going for like 11, 1200 again. It's just that demand. Every once in a while you have these anomalies where just the demand is so crazy. It kind of combats all odds. But, it's beating Poncho. It's beating Pikachu's in clothes. So it tells you something there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of going through the PSA 10 um, D23 and Hook as expected is at the bottom of the tier. But it is interesting seeing Hood kind of recover a little bit. But also none sold in the last month, so I think somebody finally just paid up essentially, which makes sense. It was still around $2,000, but I'm still surprised to see like you talk about trying to get a rare card cheap. It's just kind of amazing how cheap the Hook is.
Yeah. I do wish they had unique artwork. Like, it would be crazy if they had different art on those D23 cards. Like, if they
Hmm.
released, like, the D100 collector set as D23, Like I think we'd be seeing even more of a strong market there. But yeah, they're solid cards. I wouldn't mind getting the Mickey back, maybe, since it was like the first one and it's kind of the poster boy. But I don't know. I got a lot of stuff. My game plan for Collecticon is changing by the day as well, which we need to talk about that maybe in a future episode. Probably going in a little more cash heavy than I thought. I'm doing some consignment services on my Gold Stars because you can get better prices right now through some of the consignment services than you can at the shows. So I'll touch on that a
Yeah.
little bit. But yeah, just in case anyone's looking at selling cards at shows, check out consignment services. There's a lot of good deals going on right now where people can use the eBay vault for very minimal eBay fees, sometimes zero. So yeah, that rate is going to go up for them sometime this year because they're just trying to get customers in. But check out all your consignment services if you're looking to sell cards here soon, especially if you're going into a CollectCon. But yeah. What else we got to talk about? I got three other things here pretty much to kind of touch on. One thing about PSA and PSA grading, a lot of people are finding that PSA turnaround times are really improved right now. I don't know if you've been seeing people posting about that, but PSA's like 60-day turnaround time is starting to beat like CGC's lower tiers, and yeah, people are starting to talk. CGC was always the cheaper option, but a lot of people went with them because of their turnaround times, especially with more liquid, cheaper cards. They might not make as much, but they get the cards back, and they were really smooth. PSA now is kind of quietly beating them, and they're meeting and exceeding expectations on their turnaround time. So, very good news. Do you think we will see any graded tiers lowered anytime soon?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at PSA services for Collectors Club, but you can get $15 a card right now. So I could see them doing a special promo. I don't know if it's going to be as low as $10, but I think they could do like $12 to $13 a card. It's going to be a certain minimum. Yeah, they have it for it's a 20 card minimum. I could see them doing potentially $10 if it's a 25 or 30 card minimum. I could see them do that to try to increase, because if it's $10, with average maybe 11, 12 with all the shipping and all that, depending on how many you send off. Well, that makes it worth grading a few more things if you can get it that cheap per card.
Oh yeah, that'll open up the floodgates, especially if they touch like 11, 12, which I think they have some specials did that, but I might be mistaken. I
Well,
can't keep it straight, but
I want to say, because I was going to hold off. I don't know if you have anything to send off, but I got about maybe 8 cards to send off. I was going to actually, after going to Eddie Gaming next weekend, do a bunch of my selling stuff. I was going to see what I could get to grade there and flip, potentially make a little money. Now, we both know it's going to be very difficult to do something like that. You and I both discuss, and it's very difficult to try to do something like that, especially with Vince, because if Vince has it in a display case, he either thinks it's not worth his time grading, or he just wants to move it. He's one of the smartest guys in the entire industry for sure. That being said, you can make money. I have made money going that route. It's just very difficult to do, and you got to look at each card specifically. But so I'm wanting to capitalize on a lower tier, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that are wanting to capitalize on it as well. Making it $10, $12 a card, if that makes it to where you got larger margins to play with.
yeah. Yeah, I think 10 would be way too low. Like they'll really open the floodgates, but I mean if they're nailing these turnaround times and people are finally burnt out on sending the absolute garbage, maybe they'll do it. And who knows? I think the next year anything could be on the table. Yeah, we'll see. Just a lot of people sending garbage for a long amount of time. So as long as they see that, and as long as people do that to make $5 here and there if they hit a 10, which is a little silly, but people continue to do that. They'll just leave the price where it's at until they really need something else. But yeah, one thing that I'm waiting for is like PSA, announced their TCG magazine. So collector club membership, I think, is going up to 150 a year, but then you get some vouchers for some grades or like some online marketplaces. So that is one thing that's changing. I'm okay with that, but it's like you got to stay on top of your specials, which they have been doing a good job there. You have the option to swap to the TCG magazine instead of the sports focused magazine. So starting in April, there's going to be a TCG focused magazine all by itself. So that's really cool. Most magazines, they're very obviously sports focused, and then they've been trying to sprinkle in like one Pokemon article or one TCG article in each issue. That usually only takes up like 2 pages. But yeah, to have its own dedicated magazine and you can select which magazine you want with your membership, that's really cool. I'm still waiting on my email. There's been a lot of people who've not received the email to swap over to the TCG magazine. So yeah, hoping to do that soon. But yeah, it should be pretty cool. Think they already released the covers of it. It's got some Pokemon on there for episode or issue rather number 1, and yeah, should be pretty cool to see. Hopefully they have it online. A lot of their, I'm pretty sure their entire magazine database is online, so you can see the issues in like PDF format on there. But maybe they'll do away with that. Hopefully not.
I mean, they have the return time for 45 business days, which ends up being 2 months, which isn't terrible.
Yeah, and I think people have been getting that back as little as 30 something days.
Exactly. Isn't that what it was for us? It was something like that.
Yeah,
It
one of
wasn't that
ours is
long.
really quick, and yeah, I think it's that even quicker now, maybe.
So it's
So
really not that bad. So I mean, we're at normal times. I would say if you include the increased growth, obviously of grading. I mean, I would say we're. I can imagine it getting better. I can, but I would say that we're sitting pretty good overall within the hobby.
yeah, it brings up another thing though, like how long can this be sustained? Like,
I would say it depends on since Pokemon is clearly the driving force of this aspect of the market. I say as until there's another huge surge of interest in grading for whatever reason, I would say it can be sustained for a while. I don't see why not unless we have a change in the market, right? I mean, unless we have a huge influx of people or there's several sets that are so hyped up that it, bears down on it maybe, but like the way I see it is I don't see why they can't continue this. I really don't. In fact, I would argue it can only improve.
yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people. I'm starting to see more people embrace the binder collection.
I am seeing that.
Yep. So that's kind of my thought is like, as people who mature in the hobby realize that it's kind of silly grading these cheap cards. Because now we're seeing, $40 slabs that they don't hit a 9 or 10. They're just kind of garbage, and people are buying them at like 30%. And people are selling them at
Yeah,
30%.
I would say if the margins are so thin, I mean, if the car is only $50 in a PSA 10, that isn't even necessarily worth grading.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people doing it, and a lot of cards, if they hit that 9 or 8 or even worse, I mean, it's just trash at that
You
point.
lost money.
So it sucks. But yeah, how long will people do that? I'm sure indefinitely because people, if they can make $1 off of a month's work, people will do it. People are crazy. Not worth it to the majority of people, but you severely underestimate what people will do for like, I forgot the saying is like stepping over dollars, chasing pennies. Something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how much things would change if they just went crazy and went down to $10. But
I could see them doing that if they feel like they don't have a bunch in the queue, like a bunch of cards in the queue. I could see them doing that. But then again, it's going to be one of those you got to have a specific minimum, and it's going to be more than 20 cards. I would say. I would say it's probably going to be 30 cards,
yeah,
which it makes sense. But for 30 cards, 300, no different than 20 cards at 15. So
I think they would open it up first where they do like a big bulk, like 50 plus special for members.
yeah,
That way they can capitalize on larger bulk. Only open it to members, so you're limiting the amount of cards coming in, but it's still going to
you're
be
testing the waters.
a huge flood. But yeah, only available for Collectors Club, and then you'll also capitalize on people who buy the Collectors Club for that offer. So that'll probably be the move they do, just to kind of hit everything on all fronts. Because, some of the money they'll be losing, they'll kind of get back with people signing up. So, yeah, I don't know. But, yep. That was another issue I talked about. Another thing I wrote on there was like, potential layoffs or, getting rid of some of their workforce. I think we also kind of see that with, the upcoming of AI. I'm sure a lot of their processes on the back end could be tweaked where they benefit from AI. Or they may have already. I don't know. But yeah, I wonder if we're ever in that situation and we don't see a flood, even though I think we will. If they get in that far, I don't know. That raises the question of, is it sustainable for the amount of workers they have? But right now, I think everything's good and should be pretty promising.
Mm,
But what else we got? We got Fleece King,
yep.
#1 the Go player, which I know you're
Well,
kind of issue
I
with that,
don't.
but
I know his XP is pretty high. I don't know if I know he's a first level 50. Which, first off, I've met him. He probably doesn't remember me. I met him in 2018 or was it 2019, and at the Chicago Go Fest, where it was a bunch of the people in the secret quote unquote 100 million club, which is kind of defunct. Um, but I met him then.
as
Pretty
with
chill
all
guy.
other Go clubs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, he was a pretty chill guy. I thought he was pretty kind and all that from the few, from the limited time I had talking to him, because this was during a PvP tournament where it was extra, extra sweaty in this building. I'm telling you what. We had like 300 people. It was shoulder to shoulder. And oh my God, I was miserable. It lasted like 4 hours. I'm like, never again. But anyways,
Just everyone just sweating, tapping their phones as fast as they can.
pretty much. It
Stinking.
was like you had to find anytime you had to go to find another opponent. It's like, I got this number, this number. And you just shout it. It's like, oh hey, I'm over here. And then I remember one
Over
time we were like in a
here.
stairwell. Yeah, we were like in a stairwell and we're battling, like hunched up against the well, trying to let other people walk by, and we're just like
Other
pressing
people
on our
not at the
phones.
event.
No, it
Or
was all event focused.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, all the
Know if
big
you were
names
like
were
in just
there.
some random hotel, people are trying to get to their rooms, and
I mean, you had well,
you're over
no,
there.
it was a bar somewhere. You had like King V was there. You had Simply Moxie. Obviously Fleece King. I mean, it was kind of a who's who in terms. We got a big photo. I have a photo from that event with all those people. I don't know if Fleece King got into the photo or not. He was kind of doing his own thing that day or that night. But yeah, I still have that photo somewhere with all of us from that group. That was pretty fun, and I was up like 24 hours at that point or some shit, because that morning we did haifu hating, where we were in Chicago, and my God, that was an experience. But anyways, we got up at like 5:30 a.m. I only had a few hours of sleep, and that night, and it didn't end till like 2 a.m. I was absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, I
But
bet.
what I'm saying is, I don't know if he's considered the number one player anymore. He was the first level 50, which he was the first level 50 in part because he lives in Australia, and that's when they debuted the level cap increase. They started with Australia as the basically the head of run, and the reason why they were able to get to level 50 first in Australia is because they were about a month ahead of everybody else. Because of that, that's why both the level first two level like first multiple first level 50s were all in Australia for that very reason. Like there was
Yeah.
no way if you were in the Western Hemisphere for you to be the first level 50 because it was literally impossible with the way the leveling up system was. But yeah, I know Fleece King is one of the top players. I don't know if Brandon Tan is still playing or not. I figured he would have been the number one or some Japanese player, but I'm really not sure at this point anymore.
I think Brandon Tan still plays, but he's definitely more casual. Like he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go like he basically does it for the content and hanging
Yeah.
out, and he takes it easy. And Fleece King, he does stream
A
like
lot.
quite a bit, so I think he's still going pretty hard, or he
He is.
was.
I just don't know how you can maintain that level of grind. Like I'll tell you what, I got burnt out. Um, and
Yeah,
I
and then
was
you have your
I was
fans and stuff though that also
well, he's
keep you
making a living that
going.
way,
And
so it's different. I'm sure he's doing very well for himself with his streaming because he's now like it's you're seeing one of the most hardcore players in the world play, and that makes it very interesting. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It's not like you're what's his name Ray Versal. You know what I mean? Not saying he didn't play hard. I'm just saying he got to where he was because of his YouTube popularity. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
Fleece
He's
King was
still
already a top player
going too.
before then.
Yeah, yeah. It's debatable, but
No.
I think he's still pretty much regarded as the number one. I know he's got some controversy on some things he said in the past, but um, the main reason people are talking about him now is because
Mm,
apparently he was quote unquote hacked and got a lot of flack, and the quote unquote hacker posted a bunch of videos of him transferring all his favorite Pokemon, and even a Shundo Mareep, which was like his prized Pokemon, just transferred on video. All posted on Twitter.
mm-hmm.
The quote unquote hacker. I say that because people say hacking for a bunch of different reasons, and 99% of the time it's like usually a phishing thing where people get information, and it kind of seemed like this was the case with that, how the guy basically got Niantic to give up some of his info to get access to the account. But anyway, he the guy who did it just seems like a real ass, like, hey, look at
That's
me.
one.
Ah.
That's one way to describe him.
Yeah. It's like,
Like
here,
it's
look, here's your favorite Pokemon. Bye. Like, why are you a king? I'm a god. Blah blah blah.
yeah, like okay, you're the mania and narcissism, personality disorder is peaking out. Like what be community can be go like, dude, bro, like I'm reading it. Apparently, he's a spoofer. This guy was that hacked him. Fleece King reported him. So if you don't know Fleece King's backstory, he's really well liked in the elite community because he started off as a spoofer essentially. Like he his first account he played, he spoofed and he deleted his account when he realized why that was so shitty. He started another account, complete new, didn't spoof, and quickly rose to where he's to be one of the top players, like really, really, really quick. And since then, he's obviously like he realized what he did was wrong, blah blah blah, and he's obviously stoutly anti-spoofing, like most people, most OG players are, and there's reason for that. Now I can get into that reason, blah blah blah, but ultimately the whole thing is this guy that he. So some people, this guy that attacked him thought or believes in his mind that it was Fleece King that reported him because Fleece King's very stout anti-spoofing stance. And this guy is such a piece of shit. He got banned from all these spoofing discords too. Like when even spoofers say like, "Nah, brah," like that tells you something.
Yeah, seems like a piece of work, and Yeah, it's also, which spoofing is a whole other thing. It's Niantic pretty much relies on those spoofers buying all those raid passes, but in my opinion, they're not going to do anything about them. They never have really. But yeah, it's this dude's definitely a piece of work, and sad to see something like that happen. Even if you don't like the guy, I mean, you got to appreciate the amount of time and work that he put in. I know some people think, oh, dude, it's just like pixels on a game. But, it's more than that to a lot of people, even if it is just pixels and worthless, quote unquote. Um, people put all that time in and it's just erased. So it
Well,
just sucks either way.
yeah, and apparently, I don't know how true it is. It's now this is a very accentuating circumstance, right? Like this does not hardly ever happen. This is very, very rare. Do people get hacked? Yes. Do people get hacked specifically for Pokemon Go? Not very common. Now there is a guy that says somebody else was attacked by the same person and had their account, and it's this supposedly. Now you don't know if that's true or not. They could just be making up bullshit just to support their point because it is Twitter after all. Um, but what I think this reveals more than anything, people are saying it's like special treatment, and that it's a high profile case, right? Now I don't know how often this has happened, or when it comes to other people, but this is so rare. There's not very many situations I feel like to reflect back to, and even if there were, would somebody even be very public about it? When if they did, would people be even paying attention?
Yeah.
I think the more alarming issue, in my opinion, is the fact that they have this ability to see everything on the back end, everything, which tells me, is they can do something about spoofing, but they choose not to. And why? Because spoofing makes them money. And at this point, they've done slap of the wrist sort of measures in terms of, oh, we have like a soft cap, like if you try to spoof from across the world, you're going to get flagged. But if you, like, say, if you spoof and you're in Europe and then you immediately open your app within 30 minutes and you're back in the Midwest and the US, you're going to get flagged. But if you would wait, I don't know, for a cooldown of like 8 hours, you're completely fine. So you can get away with doing stuff like that. So they have these soft sort of measures to combat spoofing, but it's really not that significant in the grand scheme of things. Because if you just for example, if you're in Europe, you can spoof anywhere within Europe and just not log in for an hour after you come back.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure that cooldown too is like 2 hours only. Like no matter
yeah,
where, from what I've seen.
it's not even 8 hours. It's only a handful of hours. I understand. Is it worth letting 1,000 spoofers go than have one person that's innocent having their account completely banned? I would probably agree with that. That being said, having a strike system would also help mitigate that, in my opinion. Like if it's 3 instances of it, you can't tell me you're not spoofing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or are you doing something sketchy? But they don't even do that. They had one moment in 2018, I believe it was, or 2019, where they actually banned accounts with spoofing. They have not done anything significant since.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me too. Like it just goes to show like people have complained for a long time about, raid Pokemon, for example. I've had one lost before, Shiny Kyogre. No support whatsoever. They're like, here's a raid pass if you're lucky. So yeah, that has been a long lasting problem. And yeah, with Fleece King, he did. I'm sure he's buddy with a lot of people at Niantic, but
Yep.
he did have his account worked on. He did retrieve his account, and they retrieved all of the lost Pokemon exactly how they were. So whether or not they just did like a refresh of an old backup, if they created that Pokemon with the same stats and gave it to him, I don't know. But it was very, like, the stuff he said after the fact was very obvious that he wasn't really allowed to elaborate on what they did. He just got his account back. He wasn't allowed to elaborate. Thank you, Niantic. He did a video that showed a lot of these Pokemon that have come back to his account. And so then it kind of got leaked like, oh, they gave him his Pokemon back. So that's when this thing kind of became like an even bigger problem than it already was. Yeah, it sucked for him to get, his account compromised, but the bigger problem for everybody else is like why and like how they went about doing it, like recovering. So they basically have proven that they can restore Pokemon or create Pokemon and give it back to certain accounts. They definitely wanted to be hush hush about it, and I'm sure it is something that is just impossible to manage. They don't want people, falsely claiming they lost a Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so many people, so much data to sift through. Plus, I do understand Fleece King does have very well documented with his streams and everything the exact Pokemon that he has and how he got them. But still, it's just pretty messed up. It's like, no statement or anything. They just tried to be sneaky about it. And then Fleece King, like the first video that he made, it's like, oh, yeah, here, they gave me my Pokemon back. And
Well, also people say he's getting special treatment. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not necessarily saying special treatment here, but think about it. High profile case of a guy, a El Doucher, posting on Twitter that has what 8,000 likes, 900 reposts. You get that much attention for Pokemon Go, Niantic is going to see it. Okay, like Niantic is going to see it. Like you made it. You were so desperate for attention that you made it to where there was a well documented case of what was going on.
yeah.
And that right there shows undeniable proof of what transpired. Okay.
Yeah, that is
That's
another
very
thing. Like, yeah, the evidence was Fleece King, but yeah, also of the hacker himself
like
actually doing the
admitting
deed.
admitting to it, showing that he hacked it, everything. Okay. Now that makes it to where there's undeniable proof. Here's why Niantic
Showing him
doesn't ban.
transferring too.
Yeah, yeah, and here's why, and you can even see which one he's transferring for some of them, like because of that undeniable proof. Because how I said they would rather have 1,000 people go, one, because it makes money, but two, they also don't want to ban something that's legit, obviously. But because they can't prove with 100% certainty that somebody's spoofing often, or they can't prove 100% certainty certain things. This was undeniable, 100% proof.
Yeah.
So people say like, "Oh, you get special treatment," and I was like, "Well, this is a very unique and special case." Okay, I don't necessarily think it's special treatment because again, somebody else could have experienced this too, and they could have had their stuff recovered. Now, here's another thing: ever since Pokemon or Niantic introduced the "Would you like to transfer?" Ever since they introduced that feature, there's not really. It's hard to say you accidentally transfer something, right? I've accidentally transferred Perfect Four before they introduced that feature. Where are you sure you want to transfer all these Pokemon, either individually or separately? They ask you, "Are you sure?" Now, especially with events when you're like cosplay when you're mass transferring. So it makes it to where it's very difficult now to mistakenly transfer a Pokemon that you want. You have the star system, which has always been included. Now you have the system where it double checks if you want to, even on both the individual and mass delete system. So it makes it very hard to be like, oh, I didn't mean to delete that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think he did definitely receive the special treatment, but yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I feel like somewhere along the lines there was probably some other streamer or person who showed them transferring something they shouldn't have, and I wonder if they reached out, and I wonder if anything was done for them. I'm sure something has had to happen like that before, but yeah, to this scale, not not to this scale, but I don't know, it's interesting. Disappointing Niantic continues. But the only other thing I had was about Showtime. Shohei Ohtani.
Over under. What you got?
I'd bet Ohtani. He's the underdog right now, but I think he's gonna come out on top. So I'll kind of explain the story real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I'm sure everyone who's followed sports somewhat, it's getting exciting. Baseball season starting up.
We suck again.
Cardinals suck. It's gonna be another mediocre year. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The big news though, Shohei Ohtani. All of a sudden, his translator, I guess, showed up on a bunch of documents that were being investigated for a big underground online betting through sports, like basically a betting ring for sports that was illegal. And during the guy who was running that website, he's under investigation, big case going on. A lot of the documents revealed, who do you know, Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, as well as some of the people involved with that case claiming that they had Shohei Ohtani's name pop up in there as well. So rumors ran crazy. Is Shohei Ohtani betting on sports games? I think the evidence of his translator betting on sports games has been much clearer. So it's just not exactly clear how much Ohtani was involved, if he was at all. There's a lot of other things, like apparently like $4.5 million was transacted between Ohtani and his translator. Pretty crazy amount there. I don't know if it was like a payment. I haven't really like looked into that, or
Well, we don't really know
some
too much
other
about it.
stuff. Yeah, more things
That
will
we
come to
don't.
light, but
Yeah, that's where the details we don't know. And a lot of people say, "Well, Ohtani backtrack." It's like, well, you can tell the lawyers and the Dodger PR team got a hold of him after he admitted what I believe right now. I'll admit the doubt was the case. He was trying to help out a friend. And is it really too far to believe that somebody with Shohei's Ohtani interpreter be like, listen, hey, I'm Shohei Ohtani's interpreter. I'm good for it. You know what I mean? I could have seen that, so they let him bid beyond his like capabilities. I can see that. I don't really put too much into he changed his story. It's like, well, the lawyers got involved. That's pretty clear. Now here's where it becomes difficult too. Actually, I'll also say, because he was his interpreter, it's pretty evident that he would have helped him set up bank accounts.
yeah.
So he would have had, at the bare minimum, the Shohei's routing and account number at the bare minimum. Now, I don't think that's very hard to believe. I think it's very common. That happens anytime you go to a college. You have somebody with interpreter, somebody helping them. You're going to have that. They're helping set up bank accounts. They're going to be like, keep this, blah blah blah. I don't really put fault into that. Now, here's where it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be more touchy. If they reveal multiple payments, that's where it's going to be like it's a possibility, but then it looks like 50-50. Like, it looks like Ippei was the fall guy, or, Shohei was betting. If it was just one lump sum that was done, that makes it more innocuous, in my opinion. Like, he was actually trying to help out his friend. But if it was over a period of a couple years, that makes it okay. Like, come on, it's going to be hard for me to accept that one without. It's going to make it very difficult to believe Shohei's case. But in my opinion, without evidence, text, some sort of acknowledgement that Shohei was in the room, some multiple witnesses saying Shohei was involved in this, or like a text, Shohei to Ippei, or Ippei saying blah blah blah. Unless there's something like that, he's not going to get banned, because a lot of people immediately, especially on social media, that the brain dead rot it is, especially on like baseball. It seems like subreddits, especially Facebook. You see, Pete Rose. Well, it's like, brah, okay. First off, Pete Rose had a choice, all right? This is the thing that really pisses me off when it comes to people defending Pete Rose. Pete Rose had a choice. He kept on lying and lying and lying about it. At first, he was like, I never bet on baseball. They revealed information, which he did. I never bet on the Reds. They revealed information, he did. Then it was like, I never bet on the Reds to lose. Well, that's when the investigation stopped. But it was looking like they were going to find information that was the case, all right? And the commissioner at the time essentially said, we're going to have to ban you for life. And then Pete Rose agreed to it. All right.
Yeah.
Pete Rose
and at that point too, they probably just reached an agreement, because they're like, okay, dude, we know you did it. Let's just agree. We don't want it out there that you bet on them to lose, because that like ruins the integrity of our game.
Yep.
So let's just
Exactly.
agree. Let's just agree here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that's exactly what happened. In fact, if you want to look into history, the commissioner at the time, a lot of people believe it led the commissioner at the time to an early grave. He ended up dying of a heart attack because you had to ban the hit king. You know what I mean? A baseball. Um, but then a lot of boomers, especially it seems like, but not exclusively, just conveniently forget all that information. All right, and beyond the fact that some of the information that has revealed about Pete Rose's character, some of the things he's done, I mean, it's pretty inexcusable to allow him into the game and what that represents. There's a reason why Shoeless Joe Jackson, even though he probably should be unbanned, why he is still banned 100 years later, even though he was probably innocent.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
just this.
it's yeah, it's interesting. The only, you know, I think Ohtani has shown his character pretty well
Yep, I
throughout
agree.
the whole thing. Um, I think he's going to be good. The another thing that I thought about, some people were kind of analyzing this, and it does make sense. Ohtani has already came out and said stuff like, the money was stolen, there was malicious things done with the money that he was not involved with. So, when someone says that, and as quick as he did, that really opens up an opportunity to where, like, if those were false, like, he could be countersued for defamation. Him saying that stuff and taking a side already against, his interpreter, that does really open up the possibilities of his interpreter kind of counterattacking back. So Ohtani puts himself in a really vulnerable position there. So for him to do that, I would think that he truly believes he's innocent and that he didn't know. Because yeah, if he knew he did wrong and he still said that, he knows he's putting himself in a even more gruesome spot.
Well, and it's
So
one of those things too where it's like you admit to pay off his fees and it ends up being more, and he like so that's the payment. Now you could argue that like he was using to get more money to gamble. Like I don't know if that's how much debt it actually was. We don't know that information yet, or if that's just what the interpreter was trying to get. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
mean, we don't really know that information just yet. And you could say he stole it if he took it under a different premise than what was asked for, right? Like he said he needed it for this. And it turns out his gambling debts were actually just a fraction of that, and then he took the rest of the money.
yeah,
And then you find out later, it's like, oh shit, I was lied to. So then at that point, you'd consider it stolen, right? So in that sense, it's not necessarily a lie. So, but I don't know. It's one of those things where we're not going to know the full story, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt until there's convincing information. But ultimately, he's not going to be banned again unless there's undeniable evidence. Just like we were talking about with Niantic, I know it's a little bit different. There's got to be 100% no doubt certainty.
yep, for sure. But that brings up the issue of that we've talked about, collecting real people versus fictional characters that we have the privilege of doing in Pokemon. I love sports. I would love to collect sports. I wouldn't go crazy. I would probably buy like the most basic version of like my favorite character's rookie card. Um, I thought about picking up a Kobe rookie card that, none of the crazy ones, but one, I forgot which one it was, but there's some where like PSA 10 goes for like $500. You can buy some nice Pujols rookies, PSA 9 for a few $100. Um, I I would like to dabble in it, but I don't know. It just doesn't rub me the right way. Even if the people are good, like Albert Pujols, I would argue the most famous Albert Pujols hater would somewhat agree that he's a good guy. Based on of course what we've seen. We don't know
Yeah.
personal life very well, but
I mean, the
in
biggest
general, he's perceived as a good guy.
yeah,
A lot of charitable work.
yeah. I'd just
Cards,
say that,
obviously, like one of the greatest hitters of all time. His
yeah,
cards are doing well. He's got some crazy cards out there, but you know, we're nostalgic for him. Like kids today, they've heard of him, but you know, when you look at baseball and sports, it's like, which he very well may be one of these, but it's literally, if you look back in time, how many people stick out. It's like truly the best of the best, the all-time greats. Pujols is probably going to be one of those guys, but
He's an inner circle Hall of Famer. That's a no doubt.
yeah,
Like
it's
he's
like,
like top 10 in nearly every major counting stat. Like,
yeah, for sure. He's probably going to be one of those that stand out, 50 years from now when, he's just like a memory of like the old timers like us. Like once we get there, like that name will probably still stick out to 20-year-olds because he'll probably be talked about so much during the time that younger kids are in the hobby.
hmm
Kind of like Kobe, his legacy is going to be talked about forever, especially how it ended. He's going to be one of those guys who just live
hmm
on. He was going to be one of those guys anyway, but now it just his story, his work, and his career. Basketball fans who 50 years from now have no idea who Kobe is, like they'll have somewhat of a connection because that story will live on. So even at a perspective like that, it's hard for me to collect because it's truly only the best of the best, and I would like a lot of people who aren't the best of the best. But then, yeah, you also run into problems like this where, you know, I mean, look at how good Shohei was perceived before this. Like, even if he is truly 100% innocent and it's factually proven that he had absolutely nothing to do with this, like, his card still took a hit just because, people talk and people just want to watch the world burn. So it's just rough out there. So many factors that are outside of your control. Where, Charizard ain't taking any drugs. He ain't betting on anybody.
I could see the allure of Charizard slowly diminishing to an extent, but he's still going to be always one of the top ones, even in 15, 20 years, just simply for the fact that for a lot of people within the millennial generation, Charizard is a lot of folks' favorite.
Yeah.
So obviously, because of that, that's going to transfer down the line.
I will
It,
say to that, like, I do agree that we're going to see something like that in Pokemon once we stretch out to the length of, like, baseball.
mm-hmm,
And we're kind of already seeing that. The EX era stuff around that era isn't really that nostalgic for a lot of big people collecting today. Very cool cards, a lot of value there. But cards like EX Black and White, some of those should be more expensive in the high grades compared to their counterpart. But because it's what we grew up with, WotC and stuff like that, that's where we're seeing the prices. And yeah, stretched out over time, there's just going to be so many cards that only the greatest of the greats stick out. And that's kind of what's happened to baseball. I don't think it's just because it's a human factor, but I think over the course of time, any given baseball set is just kind of forgotten about as a whole. People might remember the number one chase card of like the number one set of that year, and then that's really it.
yeah.
So I think Pokemon, given the time, we will end up like that. People are always going to remember Moonbryon for quite a while,
No, it's going to
stuff like
be
that.
like the era is going to have like the E race, I should say, is going to have the tail end of WotC, and it's pretty much universally considered one of the best artworks within the hobby. I think because of that, it's one of the earlier sets. It's going to have that distinction, but you're right. After that, between like '04, basically the emergence of like the gold stars, all the way to the black white era, only the best of the best is going to stick out, and you see that already.
Yeah. Yep. Only the best of the best will stick out. Even, when you think of Fossil or Jungle, it's like, okay, Evolutions, Dragonite, not much else.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, we're already seeing that. And, yeah, as time goes on, that'll only get worse. And, yeah, we'll see how it
I
goes.
think, yeah, and with the new sets too, it makes it a little interesting where they have all these random art Pokemon too, like these full art cards, where people are just gonna everybody. You can be 8 years old and love Growlithe still, for example. Well, you want to collect all the Growlithe cards. That's kind of what you mentioned before, is people will collect Pokemon, and because of that, certain eras will get hit because of certain Pokemon. Oh,
Yeah.
like I want, or like I want also to collect the Arcanine. Well, so you're going to go back to the EX era, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, and even, Charizard has his cards. Like, there's a bunch of promos that arguably look even cooler than some of the more popular ones, in my opinion, but it's always that base set artwork. So, yeah, even Charizard has cards that kind of go by the wayside. But that is pretty much all I had to talk about. Um, Unless you had something else you wanted to mention, I think we'll kind of wrap
Uh,
it up there.
yeah, I don't think there's really much else.
Yeah. But there you have it, guys. Just kind of a little random episode. Like I said, I always like these episodes where we just don't really have a main topic, but just kind of touch on some things. Ends up being shorter and hit a nice broad range of topics. I feel like nice mix up. But yeah, I guess with that, we'll have a CollectCon episode coming up. I imagine where we talk about our plans. That's still a little ways out though. What other episodes you think we should hit? Any other ideas?
I know I'll be discussing my Yeti Gaming trip, but that won't be too much. Probably on the next one,
Yeah.
because it'll be the weekend before we record.
Maybe you'll have
But
an
there's no.
experience there that we can elaborate on or
Yeah, that might be a little bit. I looked at some of the stuff they had before, but since it's last time I looked like 2 weeks ago, I was like, so it'd be like a month before I'd be going up there. I figured they might sold some stuff. I'll have to take a look to see what the best route is. But essentially, I'm trying to transfer obviously a bunch of cards that I really don't want into more cards with more liquidity or more of an expensive card, so it's easier to sell. Because with a lot of these raw cards, I don't want to spend the time at KC Collecticon doing that. It takes too much time. Most places don't want to deal with that. Um, and ultimately, it's going to help fund potentially something for the KC Con if I can get the right cards or just could go from there. I'm not sure which route I'm going, but we'll see.
yep. Yeah, I'm getting really excited. I'll be excited for CollectCon talk because like I said, my goals have shifted quite a bit.
Yep.
Um, this is with the consignment services, you can really get more for your money selling up before the show, and I'm gonna go in there cash heavy, I think, and it'll probably be, you know, the first time where I really go cash heavy with less stuff to sell. So I'm curious to see how I'll be wheeling and dealing and how it will differ.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, might be hunting for a Rayquaza Gold Star, maybe first edition Charizard. We'll see.
Yeah. Honestly, I figure I might go for a big card, but I really like the idea of getting like 100+ illustration rares.
I do
I think
too,
that.
honestly, and I've been thinking more about like investing, like in general, in
Yeah.
traditional stuff outside of Pokemon.
Yep.
So if I decide on that, like I might be in that same boat too. It'll be really fun, like
Like
trying to
you
find
get
gradable stuff.
right. Fine. Look through cards. Only go after the potential tens. Right. Don't get at ones heavily off center, and essentially have that all just chilling. Wait several years. Potentially, they might go up enough to grade. If not, whatever, sell raw. Like obviously, go after. Don't get just all illustration rares. Just go after the Pokemon that you know are going to be easier to move, like your Gengar, your Gardevoir, stuff like that. Don't go after your random, I don't know, Rotom or something like that. Only go after the ones that are going to be easy to move, essentially. Now, so there might be a couple bucks, whatever. I mean, if you can get a Gengar art rare, or illustration rare for $2, holy shit! I mean,
Yeah.
that's not going to take much to get to $5 or $10. It really isn't.
Yeah, I mean, even if you set like aside like $100, and like I'll probably for sure do that. Like at least set aside $100 just to pick
Mm-hmm.
up like multiple of the $2 here, $2 there.
Yeah,
Because yeah, I
and
just don't really want to have any rhyme or reason. I just want to start picking up ones that I like that are really good
mm-hmm.
condition.
Yep. And I don't know if I want to buy a slab card of anything. I really don't think so. going to both New York 2 weeks after that, and then going to Colorado 2 months after the KC Con. So it's one of those things. I'm also trying to save up for a first edition. So it's like because of that, I got to be very strict on myself. This is what I did to get the Mario. This is what I'm going to have to do to get the Charizard. So I'm going to have fun by basically doing, quote unquote penny stocks for Pokemon TCG. Essentially, is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun putting together a little stack of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Bring my modern day binder, and just throw them all in there after I get them.
Yep. But yeah, that should do it for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll let you know what the next episode will be. But yeah, I guess with that, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Peace.